Hey there everybody, Coach Brandon here today. I'm here with Coach Ant and we're going to be going through the Toreando pass and all the details associated with it this week. When I go through the video, I'm actually going to be referencing and following along with the notes that I'd sent out to you guys, so if you guys want to use that as a reference when you're watching this, by all means, and we're going to go right down the order. We're going to talk about, I'm going to show you guys the pass, and then we'll go into the fine details of some of the important steps. So the details associated with pointing the feet away will be section number 1. And section number 2 will be all the details associated with generating hip exposure and getting inside the pocket of the hip. And section 3 will be about beating our opponent's frames and making that cranial shift from the hips up to the head and shoulders. Okay, making that cranial shift is step 3. Then we'll talk about our opponent's late stage defenses if they turn away from us or turn into us and how to deal with that. Then we'll talk about breaking connections to go right into the pass, the Toreando pass. And then lastly, section number 6, we'll talk about connecting some of our other favorite passes to this pass. So let's start off by just getting a general idea for what is the Toreando pass. The Toreando pass is based on distance and movement. It's a pass where I'm going to take my opponent's feet and point them to the side in a way, and I'm going to work on the outside, giving them distance, moving around the legs, passing outside to the outside of the legs and around them and getting into the hips. Okay, so let's see what this looks like. So I come in, the first things first, I'm reading the situation. I see Ant's feet are lower than the knees, and I see his feet are very close together. If his feet were apart, I usually point the feet down and come to the inside. But because the feet are close together, the knees are usually splayed a little bit, it can be hard to come into the inside position. If I do get to the inside, my opponent will oftentimes be really good at repummeling to the inside. Here, I can't get into the, I can't split and get inside position. He's always repummeling. So I come in and I point the feet to the side in a way. I don't focus on going inside, I point to the side in a way, just like so. Now from here, I clear his knee out of my way, generating hip exposure, and I control the pocket of the hips. Okay? Once I get here, controlling the hips, now it's a matter of beating the frames and getting to the head and shoulders. So as he frames, I want to use either my left arm or my left leg to take his frames out of my way and come down and control the head and shoulders. So one more time. We come in, we first point the feet away. Now we generate hip exposure and occupy the pocket of the hips. And now we go through and we work against the frames to get through the frames and get to the head and shoulders. So that's generally how we're going to be going through this. Let's talk about the first section, pointing the feet away. Okay, a couple important ideas with this is going to be misdirection and side-to-side pressure. So misdirection. When I come in, first I want to misdirect the feet. I don't just want to come in and start working to one side, because Ant can clearly see what side I'm going to, and he's going to be defending that side. So when I come in, I will oftentimes like to cheat, like I'm going to go to one side like so. I start to push the feet to one side a little bit. I take a little cheat step, and now Ant thinks I'm passing to his left-hand side. As soon as he goes to defend, I change direction and I point the feet away. Okay, so that's misdirection. I go here, and we point the feet away. Think about like a juke in football. The running back is running with the football. He sees the defender, he fakes one way, and then takes off running the other way. Okay? Same idea. We come in, I fake one way, he defends, and then I go the other direction to get the feet pointing away from me. Okay, so that's misdirection. Another important idea is side-to-side pressure, where this time, maybe I come in, I misdirect, I get here, and now he defends and he actually gets to this side. When he starts to defend on one side, I can work with my way to the far side of the body, to here, and now I'm ready to pass on this side. Okay, now I'm passing on Ant's left-hand side. If I'm too slow and now I can pass on this side. And that's the idea of side-to-side pressure, that I'm always working one side and the other side, rather than just defend, rather than just trying to fight and get in and try to pass through one side where all of his defenses are. When he blocks on one side, if I can get his feet to the other side, I can come in and start passing. So that's side-to-side pressure. Now let's talk about another important detail with pointing the feet away. Gi grips or no gi grips. Many people will teach you to come up, grab the knees, send the legs on by, and pass. Okay? That's how it's been taught for years and years. The problem, when I come up and grab gi pants, he immediately pummels his feet in. And now he's gonna grab my sleeves, and when I go to throw the legs to the side for Toreando, I'm locked in front of him. Okay, so that's a bad part of gi grips. So a lot of times when I come in, I don't grab gi grips. I don't grab up here because he's gonna do that, okay? So I come in, I prefer to use no gi grips personally. Now when he tries to go feed my biceps, spider guard, it's not there, and by the time he starts to set things up, I can already send the feet by and point them away from me. So there's gi gripping and no gi gripping. There are benefits to gi gripping too. When I'm here, when I get gi grips, I now have a great ability to start pinning legs. So if I can beat him to the punch, and he starts to try to put feet in the bicep, and I immediately start pinning, this can be very strong control for a long period of time. No gi grips usually don't last very long. When I'm working with no gi grips, I'm not expecting to hold these grips for long periods of time. They're kind of grip and go. Here I can hold these for a long period of time. That's the benefit. The downside, the feet. And now he can start connecting to me. He could also reach up, grab my, yep, exactly, go collar cuff bicep. Perfect job, man. He can go daily Eva. Basically, I go into his connections and he starts wrapping me up, and that's no good for me. Understand that from this position, my goal is to point the feet away. That's where I'm at in guard passing. My next step is get his feet pointing away. Do you remember there's a step before that though? Before pointing the feet away. We have to break our opponent's connections. Right now, I've already done that. There are no connections to me. I can immediately start thinking about pointing the feet away. But if I come up and start grabbing the gi pants, and he locks in, now I've actually taken a step backwards. I have to do more work now than I had to do back here. Here, I have to point the feet away, get to the hips, and get to the head. 3 things. Here, feet. I have to break connections, point the feet away, get to the hips, get to the head. 4 things. I've taken a step backwards. I've given myself more work to do. So I'm going to recommend that you come in and you use no gi grips, and you avoid him getting spider guard and such on you. If I come in and I see him reach my cuffs, I can just take my hands away and come in and recontrol. Okay, there's no reason I have to give him a grip. So that's pointing the feet away. Okay, those are the ins and outs of pointing the feet away. We have misdirection, like that juking motion. We have side-to-side pressure, where I really force it on one side, he defends. And then we work to the other side, he defends. We can really work this side-to-side pressure to get the breakthrough and get those feet pointing away from us. Section number 2, generating hip exposure and controlling the pocket of the hips. We need to beat both knees. We need to beat the far knee, and we need to beat the near knee. Let's talk about the far knee first, or the far leg. When I come in, beating the far leg, if I just go my hand right to the hip, this foot's gonna come over and it's in my way. So one of my favorite ways to keep this leg out of my way is this ankle grip. I come in, now when he goes to bring this foot in my way, he can't. Okay, so I can stay right on the ankle. Another way I can beat that far leg is with an inside knee post. I come here, if I can get my hand to the inside of the knee and pin the knee to the floor, now when he tries to use that foot in my way, he can't. Okay, so we have an inside knee post. We can use a pant grip too, where I go in, I grab the gi, and I use the gi grip to pin the leg to the floor. Now he goes to use that leg, and he can't. So ankle gripping, or an inside knee post, whether it's no gi or with a gi grip. That's usually how we take care of the far leg, either ankle or knee. I prefer the ankle. Oftentimes I find that if I do go to an inside knee post and my partner's flexible, that foot can still come up and over. So personally, I prefer the ankle. Let's talk about the near leg. We have a knee press and we have a kneecap insertion. So from here, I point to the side and away. He's trying to bring this leg in the whole time and he can't. Meanwhile, my left arm is going to transfer from this ankle to this knee. And now my goal here is to take his knee and press it away from his chest to expose the pocket of his hip. The tighter his knee is to his chest, the more hidden his hip is, the harder it's going to be to wedge the hip. So my goal is to take his knee, force it away from his chest, so I can wedge the pocket of the hip with my right knee. Okay? Now, let's say I try to come in, I try to push the knee away from the chest, and he keeps knee and elbow together. He does a really good job of keeping this V-frame, and I can't come inside. Okay, I can't generate that hip exposure. Now I like to do what I call a kneecap insertion, where I use the small circumference of my kneecap and I wedge it into this circle, this little triangle between his elbow and knee. Let's turn you side onto the camera. Make your V-frame amp. Look at the V-frame. There's almost always going to be a little space underneath where the elbow and the knee connect. And I'm going to take my right kneecap and I'm going to drive it in and through that space to occupy the pocket of the hip. So first things first, I come up, I use no-gi grips that point the feet away. I use a little misdirection to get to an angle. I try to press the knee away from the chest to generate hip exposure, but I can't. So I'm going to come in with my, I come in with my right kneecap right next to the hip. I step up to the hip, it fails, and I drop my kneecap right next to the hip. I don't drop my knee to the floor, my knee's hovering, but it's low. And now my kneecap drives right through and inside that space into the pocket of the hip. Okay, so that's our kneecap insertion. So again, our far leg, once we point the feet away, we can either use an ankle grip, which is my favorite, or we can use an inside knee post with no gi or a gi grip. The near leg, ideally, is a knee press. I want to push the knee away from the chest, and now I have the hip exposure I need. If I go to push the knee away from the chest and I can't, this is where I take my kneecap and I start driving my kneecap into that little triangle space. Now from right here, I want to control the pocket of the far hip too. I don't just want to release this leg, go to control it, now that leg's back in my way. So, I hold on to the ankle, and my left hand goes to the knee. So now when he tries to bring that knee or that foot back in my way, my left hand and my right hand make it impossible. Now my right hand makes the transition from the ankle to the pocket of the hip. And now we have a position that we call V-mount, where I have a V-frame, my knee and my elbow connected, the same V-frame that we use all the time, and we've mounted his hips with a V-frame. Now you can use a hand on the floor or a hand off the floor, that really doesn't matter. What's important is that my elbow stays in tight to my knee and they don't separate. If my elbow separates from my knee, Ant's far knee can come in, and now I can't get in. Okay? When I'm here, I keep my knee elbow tight, he tries to bring that far knee in, and I can always keep that knee out. Okay, so that's our V-mount. There are going to be instances when you can't get into the pocket of the hip. Okay, for whatever reason, he hides it really well. If you can't generate hip exposure on the near side, I generally recommend that you pass to the far side. Now you can do this by going around the feet or going around the head. Okay? We come in, we use a little misdirection. I come in, I try a knee press, and Ant is really defending on this side. So what I could do is I could use an inside knee post on this side. I take my hand inside the knee, push this to the floor, and now he's going to try to reach me with his feet. I'm controlling this foot with my right leg, or my right hand, and this foot's controlled by my left hand. So when he tries to catch me, go ahead. I walk around, and I can come into either the flank or the V-mount on the far side. Either way, I'm controlling the pocket of the hip. I'm either controlling the pocket of the far hip by driving my knee through, or I control the pocket of the near hip by taking my knee up and over the hip. So that's our going into the flank position on the far side. We're here, I pass, I try to get inside position into the pocket of the hip, and I can't. So I use an inside knee post, I pass his feet, and we're ready to pass on this side from the flank or from the V mount. We could also go over the head. Maybe I pass the feet to one side, I come across, he defends, but now my feet are above the hip line. If my feet are below the hip line, it makes more sense for me to go around the feet. If my feet are above Ant's hip line, it makes more sense to go around the head. So, misdirection, he defends. If my feet are above the hip line, I want to start establishing myself on the far side of his body. I'm going to take my left foot over his head, I step right here, on the other side of the body. My left forearm and elbow wedge inside the far hip. I just take my elbow, wedge right here. Now my left knee and my left elbow are going to connect and build that V-frame on the far side. And now last but not least, my right leg back steps. And now I'm ending up on the far side, same position with the V-mount. Because my left knee and my left elbow are dealing with the hips, it will be my right hand and my right leg that deal with Ant's defensive frames. He goes to defend, and we start dealing with his frames. So, we've covered misdirection and side-to-side pressure to get the feet pointing away. We covered generating hip exposure with either a knee press or a kneecap insertion. And if we just can't generate hip exposure, he does such a good job behind his hip. Now we look at passing to the far side. If I'm below the hip line, I go around the legs. If I'm above the hip line, I go around the head. All right, so that's generating hip exposure and getting to the pocket of the hip. Next, let's look at the third section of this video. Beating our opponent's frames so that we can make the cranial shift. So I use misdirection, I use a knee press, I control the pocket of the hips. Ant's going to be framing right here. Now, one way that we can beat the frames is with distance. Okay? The frames stop me from coming close. But what if I never come close? What if I just go here? And now we're in knee mount. So now Ant can go to frame all he wants. Who cares? I'm too far away for the frame to be effective. So the first idea is just distance. Don't even get chest to chest, just take a knee mount. Another solution for beating the frames is something I call a shin mount. Okay? Let's go to shin mount first. Yeah, it's shin mount. So I come in here, he frames. Now, I need some stability. If I just stay in knee mount, the problem with staying in knee mount is instability. I can try to stay here and use distance, but if Ant starts bucking and bridging like crazy, this can be very destabilizing. So I come in a knee mount, and if I feel him starting to buck and bridge and trying to off balance me, I'm going to slide my knee to the far side of the hip, and I come into a shin mount here. Now a shin mount is not a mount. Let's show our butts to the camera, Ant. And drop your feet. In a shin mount, both my feet stand one side of Ant's body. I make my little hook right here. The problem is if I try to go right for a mount, immediately, he's going to capture that ankle. So I come first to a shin mount. Now when he tries to capture my ankle and re-guard, my foot is in a position of safety outside his legs. Okay? So that greater stability makes it harder for him to off-balance me and dislodge me. Okay? Now, I'm going to show you guys something that I like to do with my feet from shin mount to take the mount. The problem here is that if I just try to slap my foot out, he catches my ankle. So from shin mount, something I like to do is I like to take my left foot in as a butterfly hook. Keep your knees tight, your chest in. So I take a left butterfly hook in, and now when I bring my right foot across, I make a second butterfly hook. Now when Ant tries to capture my ankles, I control the space between his two knees. And now I choose when the right time is take my feet out and take them out. So that top butterfly hook, putting in double butterfly hooks from the top, has been a trick I've been using maybe about 6 months to a year, and it's been incredibly effective. Okay, so I drive across the shin mount, and I'm trying to figure out how to get this foot across without getting it trapped. If I just drive it all the way across, it gets snagged, and now the elbow escapes, and now I'm in half guard. So I'm here, my knees across. I feel him fishing for my ankle. I use my free foot as a butterfly hook. Now when Ant tries to capture either ankle, either right or left, go ahead. He can't. And I end up in the mount. So that's why I like to use shin mount. We also have V mount. Put your head back to the camera. So I come in, I can deal with the frames through distance. I can just stay in knee mount. The problem with that is stability. So we can solve the stability problem by sliding through to shin mount. Even if he's framing now, I have greater stability and I can start coming inside and dealing with the frames. Another way is V mount, one of my favorites, where I take my knee to the pocket of the hip, point the feet away, pocket of the hip, pocket of the far hip, and I have a V frame across the hips. In a V mount, my right leg and my right arm are tasked with keeping his knees and his legs out of the equation. If I, at any point, release one of either my right arm, good, or my right knee, now it's going to be a problem. So my right arm and right leg have to stay engaged to keep his legs out. So when he's framing, it's going to be my left arm and my left leg that are going to be tasked with taking his frames away. I can come inside with a knee, I come outside with a knee, come inside with an arm. From the outside, I can take away the far arm. I can come and I grab wrists. Here, here. Either way, our left arm and or our left leg are dealing with his frames, so he can't control the distance. And now I can get in chest to chest, control the head and shoulders, and we're ready to start submitting him now. Okay. Anything else on here? Shin mount. The top spinning Kimura, also very useful tools. Back in position. So another thing that might happen, I come in to control the pocket of the hip and Ant immediately shrimps out. And now he starts getting an underhook and he starts turning into me and wrestling. Go ahead. And now now things are getting bad, okay? So when I have an opponent who turns into me, one of my favorite things to do is called a top spin, where I'm in the top position and I spin to the far side of the body. So I'm in here, Ant bridges in, he goes for his underhook escape. From here, stop right here, go back down. From here, just like we did from the top spin here. Or no, I'm sorry, from here. Remember from here I couldn't generate hip exposure, and we could either go around the feet, or we could go around the head. When I went around the head, it was basically a top spin, but a high variation of it, where I step across, I wedge the pocket of the hip, and I back step. We're going to do the same thing now. I get in here, he bridges in, gets his underhook, I step over the head, I wedge the pocket of the hip with my left elbow, and I back step. Now you can either back step trying to go to knee on belly like this, or you could back step underhook. You could back step and stay down on your chest, ribs, just like so as well. This would work as well. But either way, this idea that when he starts turning into me, I spin to the far side of the body. Okay? Another thing I can do is a Kimura. I'm here, he turns into me. I step. Now, rather than wedging the far hip, let's rotate. Rather than taking my elbow into the far hip to wedge the pocket of the hip to keep the knee out, I can take my elbow and I can wedge the pocket of the arm, or the pocket of the shoulder, I mean, which is the armpit. Now from here, I can put on a Kimura grip, and now I can use this Kimura grip to go into all sorts of submission attacks, all sorts of different kind of controls. Okay, stepping over, take the back, etc. So many great things you can do off that kimura. Okay? So, real quick, let's recap some of the things we've covered. First thing, we have to point the feet away. Misdirection and side-to-side pressure. Okay? Once we get the feet pointed away, now we've got to get inside the pocket of the hip. We've seen the knee press, we've seen kneecap insertion, and we've seen ways of dealing with the far leg that will help me work my way inside the hip. Once I have the hip, we have to beat through the frames. Gets his frames up, I can work knee mount, shin mount, V mount, and if he bridges in and starts bucking going toward me, I can work top spins or go to kimuras. They're all awesome options. All right, let's look at overcoming our opponent's late stage defenses, which we've already kind of started to touch on a little bit. Our opponent's late stage defenses are going to be framing, which we've touched on a little bit already, turning into us, which we've also touched on a little bit already, and turning away from us. So let's talk about turning in and turning away. Those are very, very common, okay? So I have pointed the feet away. I've controlled the pocket of the hip. I'm trying to get in to control the head and shoulders. Ant realizes he's going to lose this battle. One thing that he can do is he can turn into me, like we just showed. He can get this underhook. Now, two options. If we're fast enough, we can get all the way to the far side of the body with a top spin. Or keep on. If we're not fast enough, I try to go, but as I go, he turns into me, and now we take a front headlock position. Rotate. And now we take a front headlock position. Now from the front headlock position, we can start going into our submissions. Or we can take the back. So if we have an opponent who turns into us, we either top spin to the far side, or we establish a front headlock and we start attacking the neck. Yikes. I think the building might be falling down. Another option is our opponent can turn away from us. Okay, if they don't turn into us to avoid the pass, they can turn away from us, and then they expose their back to us. I come in, Ant realizes he's not going to be able to stop the pass, so he abandons it, he tries to turn away. As he turns away, I control the hips. He wants to turtle, go ahead. As he tries to turtle, I slow down his ability to turtle by staying tight against the pocket of the hips with my elbow. Now, as he fights his way back to turtle, see his hips come up a little. I slide my left foot in, and I pull him down into my hook. Now we go to take a seatbelt, which is a control around our opponent's head and one arm. And we have our seatbelt controlled. Now we're ready to start trapping with a posterior mount. Now we can start trapping arms, doing a seatbelt switch. And now we can start trapping arms and going through and finishing with a choke. Head toward the camera. So he turns away, we can take it back. Another thing we can do is we can just ride it to the turtle. I'm starting to finish the pass, he turns away. I try to get my hook in, but I'm too slow. And now we just end up in top turtle. And now we have to work from here, doing things like off balancing him, breaking him down, etc. And then thirdly, bring it back. As he turns away, he might try to do like an invert roll in the guard. So you turn away, I want you to put all your weight on his shoulder, legs and hips up, go ahead. And you're gonna kind of do like a shoulder roll. Yes, and you're gonna regard. Good, come back. So what that'll look like, I'm here, Ant goes to turn away, he goes right into his roll, go ahead. And he recovers guard. Perfect. So as he goes to turn away, if I'm worried about him doing this, I'm just going to control the pocket of the hip the whole time. Go ahead. He goes away, I monitor the pocket of the hip. He goes to invert, I stay with my elbow in the pocket of the hip, and I collapse his hips. I never let those hips get too far away from me, and I never let my wedges get too far away from the pocket of the hips. So that's overcoming our opponent's late stage defenses. We'll have a week of a topic on that where we go over all those in more detail. But understand our opponent's going to turn in or turn away. If they turn in, we go top spin or front headlock. If they turn away, we try to take the back, take top turtle, or at the very least, we do not let them re-guard. Okay? All right, on to section number 5, breaking connections. We've already done a section on this in the past, so we're not going to spend too much time on it, but let's say you make the mistake of coming in, and rather than using no gi grips, you make the mistake of coming in and using gi grips, and now he grabs. All right, so from spider guard, he wants to keep my feet up toward the hip line and my elbows apart. So I'm going to bring my elbows together and walk back away from the hip line, punch the feet down, and we can come in with a Toreando. Spider lasso. I take a grip on the outside of the pants. We know on the lasso I have to unwind either his leg or the arm. If I unwind my arm and he lets go, now I send his leg by, I wedge the pocket of the hip, and we have a Toreando pass out of spider lasso. Collar cuff bicep. I can't get his hand off my head because I have no free hands. First thing I want to do is take care of this. I go legs versus legs to pummel to the inside. Okay, now from here, I use my right elbow to bump his foot off my hip, and now I can start coming in and stripping this. Now I go hands in the pants, driving in, he drives back into me, I send legs by, and we have Toreando, okay? So just get in the habit of, once you break your connections, start looking for immediate passing opportunities. If I break connections and then I just stand there, he's going to establish more connections, and we're going to get in this endless cycle of me breaking connections and him reestablishing connections. And we don't want to do that. Last but not least, let's look at connecting this to other passes. The Toreando is one of the most versatile of the guard passes. You can go from the Toreando to pretty much any other guard, or any other pass. You can go from pretty much any other pass into the Toreando. It is one of the most versatile, and because of that, it features highly in my game, very heavily in my game. So, for instance, let's go Toreando to over-under. I point the feet to the side and away, but as I try to step, he snags me with his foot. And now I didn't get to the outside, but now I can come in. We cover the knee, bring it away, and we're going to do our over-under pass. Same thing, I go Toreando, he catches me with the leg. Now we can come into the pocket of the hip, we go knee cut. If he catches me here, I could also go smash by going this side and smashing. Or if he pummels this foot to the inside, and he gets both feet to the inside, but he's on his hip like this, I can just drop my knee to the pocket of the hip, and I'm right into the smash pass. I use this one a lot. Okay? Again, I try to pass, he snags. This foot pummels back in, and I drive my knee right through, covering this, and now we're into a smash pass, and we can either pass in front of the knee to the mount, or we can pass